On our S20 Ultra video, we had a lot of comments asking why there wasn't more coverage on the smaller, more affordable S20 variants, and the simple answer is Samsung didn't send us any, so we had to wait on retail units just like everybody else. So here it is, the S20 Plus, and without getting too ahead of myself, I think this is the best of the three phones in this series. So let's talk about what makes the S20 Plus so good. On paper, the Galaxy S20 Plus is almost identical to both the cheaper S20 and the pricier S20 Ultra. All three models have the same Snapdragon 865 processor, the same 12GB of RAM, though you can pay to upgrade the Ultra to 16, and the same gorgeous 120Hz display. Look, you might be tempted to run your phone at WQHD Plus resolution, but trust me, 120Hz 1080p is the only way to use the S20 Plus. Yes, it impacts battery life a bit, but everything is smoother, it all feels faster and more responsive. You just won't want to go back to 60Hz. The extra hour of battery life just isn't worth it. Speaking of battery life, I've actually noticed slightly better endurance on the S20 Plus versus the Ultra, despite having a smaller battery. Given the similarity in specs, I'm not really sure where this boost is coming from, but the S20 Plus is easily lasting me through just about any day, even when I'm using Google Maps and streaming music from Spotify. Now, some people unabashedly love giant phones, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I can't tell you how much better the S20 Plus feels in my hand and pocket compared to the S20 Ultra. It's a millimeter slimmer, it's 36 grams lighter, and the smaller camera housing makes the Plus feel better balanced. Though I will say, accidental touches on this screen have been a big problem for me, even with the reduced curve on the glass over previous generations. That's with accidental touch protection enabled and extra touch sensitivity disabled, so I would definitely throw a case on this phone. Thankfully, Samsung has some really nice first-party options like this leather case I'm a big fan of. So the software on the S20 Plus is unsurprisingly identical to that of the S20 Ultra, which is pretty much indistinguishable from the software on the S10. This is Samsung's One UI 2 running on top of Android 10, and it's just as smooth and responsive as ever. I still don't love Bixby, but it's easy enough to disable, and the rest of the software mostly just stays out of your way. But man, I wish Samsung would improve its biometrics. You get the same ultrasonic sensor as before, and it's infuriating how often it just doesn't read my fingerprint. There's an argument to be made that it's more secure than what you'd find in, say, the OnePlus 7T, but when I can't even get into my own phone, that's a problem. But as frustrating as that is, I'm willing to put up with it for mostly one reason: the new cameras. This isn't the same 108 megapixel camera you'll find on the S20 Ultra, but the story is pretty similar. Samsung upped the size of its sensors this year, allowing this 12 megapixel primary camera to take in a ton of light and even get some impressive natural bokeh. I'm constantly surprised by the natural depth of field in regular point-and-shoot photos, and even low-light photos taken in auto mode are surprisingly bright and sharp. But that doesn't mean the S20 Plus's cameras are perfect. These are still Samsung cameras with the same Samsung image processing I complained about in our Ultra video. Shadows still get brightened in post, text still gets over-sharpened, and facial details are still over-smoothened. But a lot of that can be circumvented by switching to Pro mode, and the one huge advantage of this camera over the S20 Ultra is its much more reliable focusing. See, that day one update that was totally going to fix the S20 Ultra's focusing issues, yeah, that still hasn't happened yet, and meanwhile, the S20 Plus has been just like any other phone's camera. It's been great. But look, the S20 Ultra's focusing problems will get fixed eventually, and when that happens, the S20 Plus may lose its competitive edge. The 30x zoom on the Plus isn't nearly as sharp as on the Ultra, and of course, the Ultra can reach all the way up to 100x. But are you really going to spend an extra $200 just so you can digitally zoom a little further? The S20 Plus is the perfect middle ground that gives you a large screen with tight enough bezels that you can still use it in one hand, a great camera system that doesn't get in its own way with focusing issues, a 5G powerhouse that's at least somewhat reasonably priced. I have a hard time recommending the S20 Ultra to most people, not just because it's $1,400, but because that extra money isn't really justified over the S20 Plus. If you ask me, this is the real phone to beat in 2020. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more weekly tech coverage. You can also check out our written review of the S20 Plus over at AndroidCentral.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.